We have only 35 chambers. There is no 36.
I know that. But I want to create a new chamber.
And what would that be?
I think Shaolin techniques should be available to all. So then, that's my idea for a new chamber. To teach the martial arts to the people. Anybody.
Okay, it's another episode of My Three Cents. And welcome back. And today, I'm going to give my 3 cents on social economics, black entrepreneurship, and the funding discrepancy. Let's go. Now, what I mean by this, and obviously, everything I conversate about has come from my own experience, my own journey. And I'm just sharing what I've gained from it, what I feel is missing, and how we can improve things. Because, my conversation, I try to keep solution-oriented, right? So it's not just something to get on, talk, complain, or even just make reference, but I'm trying to bring you all the way around to a solution. I'm trying to get your minds clicking in spaces where you might not be thinking about a couple things, right? So that's the one thing that's important for all of us, is to share our perspectives. And this is how we get the solution, right? It takes perspective. It takes different perspectives. It takes being able to listen, which means it takes being silent sometimes. Remember, silence is just an anagram for listen. So, jumping in with today's topic, this is something from my own journey as an entrepreneur, as a black entrepreneur or a melanated entrepreneur for the last 4 or 5 years. Different things I've learned, gained, lost, experienced. So what I want to say first with black entrepreneurship is the 4 levels that I see right off rip, right? Getting started. That's the actual action that has to be behind the idea. It's one thing to say I want to be something. It's another thing to start being that thing, right? So this is the getting started. This is action. After that comes the learning curve. Now, these learning curves can be brutal. Sometimes they can be brutal. Sometimes you can luck out, but the whole thing is, it's all just lessons. It's all trying to teach you something. It's all trying to show you something. I feel like after the learning curve comes evolution. What does this mean? It just means that you're taking what you've learned and you're applying it, right? You're evolving, whether it's a brand or, whatever it is, a product you're developing, whatever it is. When you start making it through the learning curve, you start taking those lessons and you start using those lessons to evolve your company, your project, whatever it is. So evolution. And then comes the makeover. So what I mean by that is, look, sometimes you might end up with something totally different than what you envisioned in the beginning, than what you thought you were going to end up with. And this is all a part of the process. So you have to be open to change. You have to be open to evolution of ideas. A smart person always shares his ideas with other smart people. A smart person always shares their ideas with other smart people. You can't be full of yourself, and you can't think that you have all the answers. Because what that's going to do, first of all, it's going to remove ego out of the equation. Now you can get further faster. And when you share with other intelligent people, they're going to give you intelligent feedback, right? That's almost automatic. So be prepared to listen. Be prepared to take in with an open ear, an open mind. And you'd be surprised sometimes what a couple of more people will help you come up with, or how they can contribute to your idea, and vice versa. So don't have too much ego to share what you got going on with people. Be selective of who you share it with, obviously, and always be solution based. And if you are solution based, you're only going to share it with people that you feel like are going to add something gratifying um, to what you got going on anyway, right? So that's a judgment call. Get your awareness up. Keep your awareness up. Because everybody that we share what we're doing with doesn't have our best interest at heart, right? Some people are just looking to find a hole in it or point something out that, you know, basically giving you feedback, but nothing constructive, nothing you can use, only basically giving you the opposite of what you're trying to share. So be very mindful of who you share your ventures with, your ideas, because their energy matters as well. The energy of the people you talk to matters. And if you don't have people around you with great energy, keep it to yourself for now. Cultivate it, incubate it, bring it out at a more presentable time where they can see the vision a little bit more clearly. That way, it'll save you a bruised ego. Because a lot of us get the bruised ego syndrome when somebody doesn't agree right away with the thing that we're so excited about. We go to share it with them, and they got nothing good to say back. So, that's two lessons. Be mindful of who you share your stuff with, and also don't look for approval outside of yourself. Remember, you're not sharing for approval. You're sharing for solutions. Okay, so what I want to talk about first, because if you remember, I mentioned the funding discrepancy. That was the last little thing I snuck in the title. And I want to say, man, getting funded is no joke. If you've never taken a chance, if you've never jumped out there and had a project big enough where you needed to reach out for funding, just listen. Getting funded is no joke. So besides the venture, having to get started, having the learning curve, going through the evolution, going into the makeover, the funding does all of those things as well. So these 4 things that I keep repeating are going to happen over and over throughout your process in each phase, if you're doing it right. If you're doing it right, because each phase takes its own type of action. Each phase is going to have its own learning curve. Each phase is going to require some type of evolution of thought. And each phase might require you to make it over, right? When you get enough information together, you can see things a little more clearly. So I'm going to hit this from an angle of social economics. And I think this is going to be an interesting talk once we get into it. But I just had to preface that because, there's multiple ways to look at things. And I'm one of those people that I try to see it from all directions. I try to go into things without judgment, and that way I can perceive the thing as a whole and give you a more well-rounded approach. That's one of my attributes, and it's one of my goals, especially when I do episodes for My 3 Cents. So getting funded. Now, getting funded starts in reverse for melanated people. Now, you might not understand that statement right now, but you will. Getting funded starts in reverse for most melanated people. Let's just say minorities. We know we're not the minority physically, but this is how they refer to us. So again, a lot of times I use terms that you'll be able to understand as I'm communicating them to you. So I'm not necessarily using the terms of what I define things as, but I'm using the terms that my audience uses. I'm using the terms that you can recognize, right? Because I don't want to lose you in conversation. I want to get this message across. And my 3 cents always has some kind of lesson. If not, why am I even here, right? Why am I talking? So it's all about sharing our experiences. So getting funded starts in reverse from melanated people. As a people that often help each other and support each other. Now, I'm talking about the minority culture. We're mostly a people that often help and lean on each other. We support each other. We depend on each other. And when you come into, when a minority goes into business for himself, right? You come up with an idea, you come up with an invention, you have something innovative. You want to go into business for yourself. Well, the way this culture views going into business is separating from the support systems that we have had set up in our families, through our friends, culturally, right? You see, what I'm starting to show you is the cultural difference in business approach, right? I'm going to show you something, so just pay attention. Now, the melanated entrepreneur, he has an idea. He goes, he takes action. He's getting started. He goes into his learning curve. He's having evolution. And what happens is when we jump out there into the business world, let's say, we see it as growth with self, right? This culture sees that as growth in self. We say, man, this is something different. Not everybody in my culture is doing this. Actually, a very small number of people in my culture are doing this. Now, just from a culturally perspective, let's look at the European, right? Let's look at the minorities. Who is more involved in day-to-day business, big venture, investing, and things of that nature? Who's more involved in that? We already know the answer is going to be the European. Now, in the business world, there comes a point where funding is needed. But in funding is where there's a cultural discrepancy. The cultural discrepancy is in the process for funding, for gaining funding. Now, when you talk about the non-minority cultures or the European culture, the first step is to go to friends and family for the initial round of funding, right? We all know that before you reach the Series A funding, when you're still pre-money, which means you just haven't created something that's bringing in a revenue yet, you're developing. It's often seen that the first step, the first place where you get that money is going to be a friends and family round, right? This is the friends and family round. Now, the European understands that to jump into the real level of business, and I mean a high level of business, where there's actual ownership and investment, you need to have reached a certain level of accomplishment, both in the process and financially. This is the catalyst. This is what gets you that boost. This is what gets you out there, right? Because when you reach people and you're making contacts, what do you have to show them? What have you accomplished? Where are you in your process? Very important. So, again, in other cultures, because of the initial, what I like to call social privilege. So when I say other cultures, in the European culture, in this country, you have this thing called social privilege. This is what I call it. Some people say white privilege. I call it social privilege, right? Because that's what it boils down to. It doesn't need to be described as a color or some type of racial thing. It is just what it is. So I refer to it as social privilege. Now, when the European is raised up, he's coming up, he already has a tremendous amount of social privilege, whether he realizes it or not, he or she, Whether they realize it or not, they have a tremendous amount of social privilege. What is social privilege? Well, social privilege is it can be as simple as being heard and not scrutinized. It could be as simple as being backed quickly when they say they have a great idea. It can be as simple as riding down the street with their hat on in the car, driving, and not being under suspicion of having drugs and being pulled over, right? This social privilege can play out many different ways. And the trickiest thing about it is that a lot of Europeans don't feel like they have it. And it's because it's not something they created, right? It's something that is automatically built into the system of how things work here. So I would say that their amount of social privilege is actually measured by the lack of social privilege that other cultures have here in the same place, right? So it's not necessarily something that they did to create it, but they're kind of born into it, whether they realize it or not. So, like I said before, the minority normally comes from a very close-knit family where a lot of support, a lot of leaning on each other, a lot of dependency. The European model is actually able to separate from the parents and the family and friends support side of things a lot quicker in life. Why? Once again, it's because of the amount of initial social privilege that they are born into. Now, how does this play a part? Now, because of this, when they come up with an idea, they come up with an invention or something to jump into the entrepreneur world, it really seems like they are quickly backed by their friends and family. Because the way that their friends and family perceive what they're doing is why they're so quickly backed. Now, I'm going to make this make sense. When you're born with a lot of social privilege, when you have the ability to pretty much choose what path you want to go on in life without much opposition, this is the privilege part. Success is almost imminent, right? Success seems like it's an imminent thing. It's something that you're going to have one way or the other. So when someone that's European actually comes up with something different, this is why it's perceived by their culture as, oh, wow, we're going to back you. Because guess what? They see, and I'm going to use, let's say, John. They seen that John had every opportunity to go to college, do this, do that, become whatever he wanted to. So when John comes and says, man, I have this venture that is going to it makes me want to do something different and change my plans all of a sudden, right? Well, guess what? Their family says, okay, great. We're going to back you. Why? Because John's family feels like, and his friends, feel like John has always had opportunity. And if John is going to change his path for this thing that he's talking about now, it must be real. No question. You see? Because what they don't understand is why you would throw away privilege. And again, it's a privilege that a lot of them don't even know they have. So John's going to be quickly backed by friends and family. Now, perfect example. If you ever watch Shark Tank, if you ever watch shows like this or have dealt with any type of investments, a lot of times you'll see that the people that haven't raised money in the friends and family round don't get investment. That is because the average investor feels like if your ideal is so great, if what you're doing is going to be that prosperous, then why aren't your friends and family backing you first? They see that almost as a red flag, actually, the European. But again, the only reason they see it that way is because they come from tremendous amounts of social privilege. You see what's happening? This is a social issue. This is a cultural issue. It's not just an even playing field of quote unquote business and entrepreneurship. It's not. So let's run this scenario. In the black community, you have this gifted person, right? They're gifted on and off paper. I mean, IQ test through the roof. Personality types, everything is leaning towards this guy. This guy has something. This guy, man. Listen to this guy or this person, right? So you're a gifted person. You have a multi-million-dollar idea. You've started team building. You've got top engineers in the field on your team and behind your project. You've developed all the way to the prototype phase. You've had nothing but sweat equity. You didn't get much help financially. You were actually coming home from your main job. You were working. You were what they call grinding. And you were just getting at it, right? Just plain old getting at it. Now, being self-taught, studying hard, taking chances, getting out there. Now, what's next? Here comes the point of need. This is where a cash influx is needed to move the project forward. Now, you've made all kind of multi-million-dollar businessmen contacts throughout the years. You've gotten the attention of key players in the field. You even have the contacts and communication with wealthy potential investors. But they all have the same thing in common. Before they give you anything, they are very interested in your current position. Now, this isn't necessarily a wrong thing to look at. This sounds on the up and up so far, right? They just want to know your current position. But remember, most people in these positions with the means to invest, most people who are in the position with the means to invest in whatever they so choose are non-minority. And they view success in a cultural way, right? Now, what I mean is, by having so much social privilege starting at such a young age, the European, I'm not saying that only the Europeans are successful, but I'm using them as a model because they are, if you're going by the numbers, they are the largest culture of success, of what we call success in this country. So don't be offended if I keep using the European as the success example. Okay, this is to make a clear point, right? So by having so much social privilege starting at such a young age, they perceive and believe in more possibilities. For example, in the black culture now, with the youth, they only see a few examples and possibilities of success by the ones that actually come from where they come from and actually look like them. Where are these few possibilities? We can all say them at the same time, I'm sure. Sports, rapping or singing. And then we have the traditional military. A lot of people in our culture go to the military based on tradition. Mom did it, dad did it, grandpa did it, whatever the case may be. So these are the main three areas that we look to achieve some type of success. And I mean, this is the mind state of the youth right now. Prove me wrong. This is the mind state of the youth. Look at the numbers. We're paying athletes millions and millions upon millions of dollars to play a kid's game. Now, am I taking anything away from these guys that get out and work hard, quote unquote? No, I'm not. But we have to look at how these things are being used as a distraction. We have to look at what they're overshadowing with sports and with rap and music. Look, We know our people are the most spiritual people. We're very gifted and talented. We know we can sing and put words together that rhyme and express ourselves in unique ways. I get it. We all get it. But when do we start to evolve as a people? When can we get into engineering and looking up to things like that, coding and technology? When do we break the glass ceiling? Very important question. Again, I have nothing against sports. I've known a lot of sports players, athletes. I'm an athlete myself. I still go out and play basketball. I'm pretty good at it, but I never wanted to make it a career. It's a game. You got to have something behind that. I've had relatives that have played professional sports. I looked up to them. But I did not look up to them because of the sport they played. I looked up to them because of their own personality and persona, their own attributes that helped them become great at sports. But guess what? Sports is not what made them great. You see? So I really want to put emphasis on that. So, the issue with our youth seeing these opportunities in such a, it's a small number of opportunities. And with such a broad horizon of opportunity available for the non-minority or the European, by the time they reach higher levels of management and ownership of industry, they have less empathy for need. Now, remember what I said before about the gifted persona? He did all these things with his business, and now he was just in a position of need to move to the next phase. So then I'm going back to this. With such a broad horizon of opportunity available for the non-minority, by the time he reaches higher levels of management and ownership of industry, they have less empathy for those in need. And they judge the current position based on their own experiences at that same point in their process previous. Now, again, it seems like that's what you're supposed to do. You look through somebody's venture, you say, okay, he should be here or maybe there before he gets this investment. I get that, right? But it's a very dangerous thing when a large percent of the ones making those decisions are very culturally different than you. You see, because there's certain ways they're going to perceive that you're just not going to understand. This is the difference. So, with that being said, when it comes to getting funded, right, there is this is what I like to call a culturally cultivated, predetermined level that is expected to have been reached by said investors. There's a culturally cultivated, predetermined level. So the first round of funding, like I said, is that pre-money round. That's the first real round. See what you can get from the people that know you. Now, this is, like I said, this is expected to come from friends and family, and it should be enough to get prototypes and also some type of momentum for your future plans, right? So you should be able to get your hands on prototypes and have some type of momentum going, whether it's social media, internet, or just some really good planning for advertisement and things of that nature. You got to have some type of momentum. So for the non-minority, so for the European non-minority, it's much easier to return to friends and family for that initial investment. Again, now this is because being born and coming up with so much social privilege, you broke away from friends and family early. You see what I'm getting at? You've been out there. So when you come back and say, hey, I'm doing this now, I need you guys to back me up, they got them. They back them up wholeheartedly. I watch Shark Tank sometimes, and the people they'll ask, well, how much have you put into your business? They'll say, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000. The next question is normally, where did you get that money? Very key that they're asking them these questions. The answer is normally family and friends, friends and family. And if you know about business, if you know about valuation of companies and projects, then you can understand that this round is super important, because the amount of money that you're able to raise from friends and family will also determine your current valuation of your venture. So how much can you get them to believe in you? And how much can you get towards your project? This sets the tone for future investors, because they see your valuation level. So when they go back and ask for that money, it's very easy for them to get their hands on it because they left the nest early. So for the minority that comes from the close-knit dependency of our culture, it's harder to go back for the support of a money investment, especially when it takes a substantial amount of money to reach the next phase. You see? Because the fact that we have to jump out there on our own, break away from the support system, do a lot of work through sweat equity, the fact that we're making it happen without a lot of help, without a lot of outside help, I put emphasis on that. We normally can get our projects to a place where when we do need help, it's going to be more substantial amounts of money. That's only because of the phase that we have gotten the project to. So this almost kills us, because we're going back to our people like, hey, man, I've been working on this all this time and I need $100,000, right? They say, well, we can't do it because culturally, normally, our people aren't in a position to do these kind of investments. So even when you've done a lot of work to get to the phase you're in, the plan has been solidified by top engineers. Everyone that you speak to on the inside wants to back you, but they don't have the resources. Those that do have the resources are the higher ups, what we call the higher ups, who can't help. They can help you if they want, but they're wondering why your friends and family aren't backing you. Here lies the conundrum. So, for one culture, it's very normal and easy to go back with a great idea and say, hey, I need backing. They say, great, we got you. You've never asked for much. You've always had a plan in place. We've always seen you as a future success. So here you go. How much do you need? We'll put the house up. We'll do what we got to do. Now, we go back to the minority culture, who, first of all, our people aren't traditionally in position for any kind of ventures or investments. Now, this is traditionally I'm speaking. We're not normally in a position to fund ventures later in life. Most minority people don't have the level of knowledge that it even takes to be involved in investment ventures, even if they wanted to. So what I'm showing you is that this is a cultural handicap. Some kind of way we have to bridge this gap, because, the minority and melanated people are very innovative people. I mean, do your research on history. Where did most inventions come on, let's go all the way back to ancient Egypt, or even before that, ancient Kemet. Let's go all the way back to the technology that we started with. We've always been innovative, but when a system has been created where certain cultures in large percentage have been put in charge, It's very hard to operate within that because now comes cultural expectations where there's a cultural gap. So how can we bridge that? This is why I say getting funded starts in reverse for most minorities. Because it's the going back to family that most investors see as step one. Most investors, again, are non-minority. So when the minority he gets out there, he's done all this work, it's year 3, and he needs investment, and guess where they send him? They send him back to his friends and family. They send him back to the support system that helped raise him. This is why we can't progress the way we need to, and a lot of times we end up selling our idea or giving our idea away because we cannot support our own ideas. And we become satisfied with a one-time check while someone else takes the idea, flourishes, becomes multimillionaire, right? Over and over. It's happened many times. So it's doing a lot of on-the-fly learning and being open to a lot of conversation. And at this stage, the minority entrepreneur does not get the help needed to move forward, but instead a lot of advice. And the advice actually comes over the acknowledgement for what has already been accomplished. Because the sad fact is the non-minorities don't see what you've done as true accomplishment. Because in their world and in their culture, you're still at step 1. You see how that works? You're still at step 1. The things you've overcame and gotten away from and broke away from are not acknowledged in the business world. This is a cultural difference. When you come from social privilege, you feel like you should be where you are, right? And you feel like, why isn't everybody here? We all have the same opportunity. It's not true. It's just not true from a cultural standpoint. Because there are different levels of cultural accomplishments. And if one culture can't recognize that in another, what are we doing? Where are we? So we got to do away with the cookie cutter formats of business. We got to do away with the cookie cutter formats of success, which is measured in the eye of the beholder. Only you can say that you're successful or not someone outside of you. So instead of seeing the minority shortcomings, quote unquote, as a setback, we should be focused on their diligence and fortitude to change their situation and to separate from the social norms, the cultural social norms. Here you have the minority trying to rise above the athlete, the average mindset of success in our culture. He doesn't want to be a rapper, even though he can put words together, right? Even though he can play the game masterfully, he wants to rise above these cultural stereotypes, these cultural norms as they're seen by other cultures. So I feel like there needs to be less comparison of current position and more acknowledgement of natural innovation and abilities. Let's acknowledge that. Let's acknowledge what we have been pulling out of ourselves and using to get ahead. So what I wanted to show today was an aspect that not many people see. It's a cultural aspect, and this is why a lot of minorities don't leave their jobs. They don't seek investments. They don't follow up on ideas because they don't have a lot of good examples of those ideas really leading somewhere really leading somewhere with promise. You get the Damon Johns and you get the few people that have broken to the business world, but guess what? Those few people are on the forefront because there's only a few of them. That's why. So even when you watch something like Shark Tank, and sometimes you have 5 or 6 different sharks, you're only going to get one black one at a time. I've seen one where they had a guest host, and you had 2 melanated guys up there together doing investments, but that was an anomaly, right? It is not the norm. So I hope I really showed you another way to look at things. Let's start looking at accomplishments and fortitude. Let's start looking at diligence and awareness, and not just where someone is at the time, because that doesn't tell the whole story of the journey. And we could be missing out on some great innovations and some really great ideas. We could be putting them off for years and years by not being the ones to do something different, to see something different, to break away from those social norms. So that's it, man. I just wanted to touch on that. I wanted to give my 3 cents on black entrepreneurship and the funding discrepancy. This is social economics. Only a small piece of it, but this is social economics. Remember, as a minority, your opinion matters. You're a trendsetter. You're innovative by nature. Don't give that away. Don't let that dwindle because you got to go to work and build someone else's company and corporation. Even if that's what you got to do at the time, go home and work on your own thing. Get with some people that want more. Right? So this has been my 3 cents. This has been my pleasure to do this episode. I hope you get something from it, some type of insight. And I'll see you next time.